And that's where she found out that a lot of people out here have cancer, respiratory disease, and a lot of people's in remission for cancer. So then she started calling around to different agencies, and the first organization she ever contacted was the environmental organization that was located in D.C. And then they connect her with a toxicologist. His name is Dr. Reginald Jones, and he was surprised to see that an African American woman was calling about environmental issue, and particularly a widow that's lived in public housing. So he started getting her a lot of information, and then from her own personal research, she was able to document. There are 50 documented landfills in our area, and over 350 polluting entities. And so she started calling around to different regulatory agents, asking why the pollution in our area was so bad. At one point we had like 300,000 pounds of pollutants in our area today. Today it's down to less than 80,000 pounds. So, and that's because we're living in an industrialized area. We have a lot of abandoned steel mills in this area that closed down, in which they left a huge environmental graveyard that need to be cleaned up. So as a result of some of her work, so she started working with different groups around the country. And the United States Environmental Protection Agency was erected in 1969, but it didn't have any responsibility what impact industry do on community. They was only mandated to work with, to regulate industry and to work with academic institutions, but not to work with any community groups, not to get any resources, and not to give us any information. Until the groups from around the country came together, and under the Clinton administration, we was able to get past the Executive Order 12898, which allowed resources and information and technical assistance to be provided to community-based organizations, because we have a right to know about the way industry regulates in our community. So when you look at this is my mother's wall. She passed away 6 years ago on January the 12th, 2011, 13 days shy from her 76th birthday. At the top, she was given an award by President Bush for communication about environmental issues. Right here is when I was just talking about the Executive Order 12898, that she was with Clinton and many other environmental leaders around the country witnessed the signing of the Executive Order 12898. And at the bottom, she's with Clinton again when he was honoring the top 100 environmental groups in the country. And we was the only African American that was honored at that particular time. And as you asked about this puppet, this is a puppet of my mother. And it was a play that was conducted. It was called the Echo Cabaret. And it was really tracing when Christopher Columbus came to America and all the waste that was generated all the way up to the present. So if they lift up her arms, there were skeletons under the arm to reflect about what impact our environment is having on our health. And it was done by the Underground Railroad Theater, and they instituted the Hazel Johnson Environmental Justice Award, and it's given out to any grassroots groups that start working on environmental justice issue around the country. And these are some, and this once the Executive Order 12898 got signed, it opened up the Office of Environmental Justice. And she was one of the first charter members of the Office of Environmental Justice that's under the United States Environmental Protection Agency. What else? That's a picture that was done by her by Salt Magazine, that sketch, and they did a story about, that was one of the first written article about her. And the rest is just the other organizations that award her for the work that she has done around environmental issues. I've been working with our organization for now 30 years, believe it or not, 31 years to be exact. And I was just a clerk, administrative clerk, helping do all the paperwork, outreaching to the community. Then I went to project manager, because we started doing environmental training in the community. We was the first in the country to bring a technical training down to the community-based level. And that was for lead abatement for workers, to teaching people how to remove lead hazards out of the house as a worker. We still do environmental training today. We do mold remediation. We do, how many of y'all ever heard of HAZWOP? HAZWOPer.
HAZWOP?
Yeah, it stands for Hazardous Material Handling and Managing of something. And they just call it HAZWOP. It's such a long title. Those are people who respond to chemical spills, and they have to suit up and put on the whole respirators, the whole getup, protective measures. We also lead in asbestos. We do lead in asbestos, underground storage tank. And now we're developing a curriculum to teach the community how to install as a technician for solar panels. So, because our community is finna become a solar community with the Chicago Housing Authority. So, our organization has really been, and my mother's interested to talk about a lot of her work and see what she advocated years ago to see in a negative way what is happening today. You know, we call it climate issues that's really going on today as we witness all the catastrophes that's happening in Texas and Florida and in the Caribbean islands. She called it a change in weather pattern 26 years ago, that because of the ozone depletion and the big hole that we put in the ozone is going to cause a lot of climate change. But she didn't call it climate change, she called it change in weather pattern. And today we see it. Did I hear today that Sierra Leone somewhere had a snowstorm? Did y'all hear about that?
Really?
Yeah.
Sierra?
Yeah. I think it was Sierra. I'm sure it's one of those hot climates, and that's the first time they ever, huh?
That's West Africa.
Yeah, I know. I know. And they had a snowstorm. First time ever. I think I heard that this morning. I said, now this is unbelievable. You know, but you guys gotta, you know, we've been doing the work to advocate for the laws that's on the book to now to protect our air, water, and land. But you guys gotta carry the torch now, you know, because it's your future rely on, and your children's future. Your future children depends on what we do. You're the one that's going to be educated to be able to come back and teach the community how to protect itself. Because if you don't care about your health, because everything I tell people, one thing I'm clear about: pollution don't go to heaven, right? It don't go to heaven. Whatever goes up must come down. But it has an impact on our quality of life. And we have to make a conscious decision as we're going to be players, good players or bad players. And right now, in the current administration that we have now, we see a lot of people making bad decisions to protect our health. If you don't have good health, what can you do? You're limited about what you can do in it. And the quality of, I mean, because when you go buy a house today, you don't just look at the house as a pretty house anymore, as the past we used to do. You got to look at what was the prior land use of that, because my community is built on a liquid landfill back in the 1890s, because it was the George M. Poorman who owned a lot of this land in this area. He had a sewage farm, he had a sewage treatment facility, but all the draining pipes went through all there. So the farther you dig in the soil, the higher the concentration of contaminants. And this is one particular contaminant they call, it's a PAH, or polyaromatic hydrocarbon. Which any of y'all going to school to be in environmental sciences? Let me know. Raise your hand, so I can make sure that I say these words right. The polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and we have one chemical called benzaidipyrene. Short-term exposure, skin rash. Long-term exposure, skin cancer. You know, so we forces EPA periodically to come out and test the soil, just make sure that the soil is, you know, because they cleaned up 20 feet of it. And we just went through a major renovation out here, so which, that was maybe about 10 years ago we had them clean it up. So in the last 5 years, they continue to clean up the soil out here. So So it's important to know about land use before you make any decision about where you want to live. You know, but you have a right to know about whatever facilities in your neighborhood and how you can make them to use the best available technology there is, because no one, right now, we're not into, many of the fossil fuel industry, as far as energy, it's fading. But we have a president that thinks that that's the main source of energy that we should be using. And and it's going to increase our carbon input instead of decreasing our carbon input. And we have to think about what we do, because how much did y'all think about your garbage? How much do you really think about garbage or where it goes? You don't. You're only thinking about getting it out your house and putting it in the dumpster. And once it's in that dumpster, your end process, what you think about is over with. But when you think about it, it goes to somebody's neighborhood. It goes into a landfill. And most of the stuff that we produce today is not biodegradable. So it stays around forever, So that's the negative impact that we're having, and we as consumers is part of the problem, and we need to be part of the solution. But how many of us is really conscious about it? How many of us really care? Even though if we are conscious about it, how many of us really care about it? Until we start having negative impacts that impact not all of us, not one person, but all of us at the same time. So this is what environmental justice is about. And it's about economic opportunity. How can you turn around something that's negative to benefit the community? So we looked at a lot of environmental hazards in our community, and we tried to train people to be the first workforce to be able to remove those things. So now we're looking at how can we make our community a green, sustainable community. So we was able to force the Chicago Housing Authority to look at making our community a solar community. And we also looking at, because we have a lot of available land, we sit on like 180 acres of land, and it could go up to 240 acres of land if you include the forest reserve and a little other property that the city owns in this area. So there's a lot of opportunity to bring in wind turbine into this area. We got 19 miles of waterway, 11 miles of it is unfit for human consumption and recreation. So why not use that as a source of energy to power up or to bring or a heating process? So when you're looking at, but see, we need folks in the academic world to be able to come to help us to explore those opportunities. So what we've been doing is hoping to build the Hazel Johnson Research Center. When you came off the expressway and you came up to a light, when you pass that light, that is the Hazel Johnson EJ way, all the way to Indiana Street, not the state of Indiana. So we're trying to raise the consciousness of people who's most negatively impacted and disconnected from environmental issues, and to see where can we engage the community through the economic opportunities. So, any questions?
Could you talk about what the red line extension coming here might mean?
Gentrification. Because before the housing stock market crash, the Chicago Housing Authority was selling off all public housing, and the banks was taking up the mortgage on it, for real. We was about to lose. I think U.S. Bank was going to take ownership of Altgeld at that particular time because the housing stock growth. And they was going to build the Riverdale redevelopment plans. They was going to, just like I said, we got 19 miles of waterway, right? They was going to build $300,000, $400,000 townhouses on the banks of these rivers so people can dock their boats. So all that crashed for this area. So when you look at the opportunity, which was connected also to the red line extension in this area, which is coming directly in this community, and where they're talking about proposing it at, I think it's over, it may be 200 acres of land in that area for economic development. Because you know where it's at? When you when you exit on 130th,
Right.
that overpass is right under there. It's right under there. So that would, but we was positioned ourselves to be engaged in that whole process. But they're not planning to do anything until they expand, complete the red line reconstruction of 95th Street. But, so they're giving us a little time to be able to re-institute, because we was working with the Development Institute, it was called,
Developing Communities Project.
the Development Community Project. We served on one of their pods, that was it pods?
Mm-hmm. Pod,
Yeah, ties or pods, whatever they call it. Well, we made sure that our voice was being heard as far as what the red line extension was gonna do for our area. But it will bring because most transit orientation development now is having businesses that are located in there. So we was identifying residents in the area who had interest in having their own business. One, we already got started. She started a market, a small market, and she currently operating it today. So we hoping that she would transition into one of those spaces, So we're trying to identify people and we're going to be doing entrepreneurship training also, to be able to train people who want and help them get their license or whatever they need required to open up a small business. So we're trying to do those type of things as we speak today, because we know that it's going to open up a whole new market and opportunity for this area to regentrify this area. So we're conscious of that, but it is so badly needed, because we only got one bus, and that's the 34 Michigan, and it runs in 24 hours. But still, it takes us at least 90 minutes from here to get to downtown. That would cut that time almost by 30 minutes. At least by 30 minutes if the red line extension come in. And it gives the opportunity, because it go from one end to the other end, and the last stop is Loyola University. So, there may be opportunity for people to be able to go to, don't have to catch so many transfers in order to go to another university, even though we got Chicago State here, but there's also a stop for 95th Street too. So it's just opened up so many pathways of opportunity for folks to be engaged in employment. And it also, like, for an example, we on 130th in Torrance, that's where a lot of the Lake Calumet area industrial corridors, the biggest industrial corridors are, like Ford Motor Company. If I walk from here to 130th Street, it would take me I think it took me 32 minutes, because I did it before. But if I ride a bike, it'll take like half of that. But if I catch public transportation, it's gonna take me three buses and still walk 6 blocks. That's crazy, isn't it? That's just crazy. So, by them opening up the red line extension to 130, it will create bus lines for it to go straight down there, which will be less time. It only probably be 10 minutes just to get from 130th Evans, for an example, to 130th and Torrance. So that's less than a mile away. So, but the disadvantage is that will it gentrify our area? That's what the whole concern will be.
Are you worried? Because you mentioned that before the housing crisis, there was talk about selling the public housing. Are you worried that could then come back?
Well, we hope to put ourselves in a position through the energy that is going to be generated out here, because we're forcing CHA to make a cooperative, where the residents will own, because we're planning on selling if we do wind turbine in this area.
Okay.
So we'll be able to store a lot of energy from the area, and we are having a conversation with CTA, because it's called a degenerative braking system, that they can store that energy too. So why not share those energies? So we're looking at renewable energy as an opportunity to give us wealth to be able to sustain our own community.
So the renewable energy that Altgeld hopes to generate will give the community more like bargaining power.
Yeah.
If it comes to the point of negotiating with developers who want to, build high rises or, fancy townhomes on the river.
Right. It give us the opportunity to have a voice, or to become a developer myself if we want to. It don't have to be townhouses on the water, on the riverbanks. It can be open space. You could put a recreational center or put a little restaurant or something out there, to teach people about, water quality in this area, So it's a whole lot of variable, but if you don't empower the community with, at least because we've been so at a disadvantage in so many years, maybe a couple of decades, the only way that you get low income people in poor areas to be engaged is through economic opportunities. And we're hoping to propose through our development is to create a community credit union, so we can be able to finance a lot of small businesses in the area. So we in exploratory stages, and we work a lot with the University of Illinois students. We got them. We got the engineer department who's designing the building, and they're gonna have the 3D prototype completed by the end of this semester. Yeah.
Is that UIC?
Yeah, UIC. I forgot. I gotta ask CHA. Is it okay to install a solar panel on this roof to see how much energy that we use? So.
Especially now it's 95 degrees in September.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So we hoping, because we always believe that university, community, and business should be able to work together. Especially us being as we define as a fence land community, an environmental justice community, and the industries in my area is my neighbors. Either you're gonna work with us, or we're gonna force you to work with us. We're not saying that you're not gonna work with us, and in some kind of indirect way, you're gonna be engaged in a conversation in the whole redevelopment of this area. So we work a lot. I don't know if you saw a big it looked like a big old solar panel, but it also air monitoring, a community air monitoring device that we forced the water reclamation district in our area to install, because they operate in our area and sometimes the air is unbearable. So we should be collecting that data within the end of next month from now to see from a public health perspective as to what impact their facility is having, so that we can advocate for better technology over it.
So I have a couple questions. One, like, what do you mean, like, when you say the air is unbearable? Is it like there's a lot of smoke in the air, or?
It's a smell. It's a smell. It smells like everything that come out your toilet, sinks, and industrial discharges lay out in the bed. That's what it smells like.
And then, how is community morale, like, with the renovations that have happened to the buildings, to all it seems like through this organization there's been a lot of forward steps that you've been able to get some wins for this community. So
Yeah.
how's, like, the morale within Altgeld Gardens about
Well,
the
it's
future?
it's different because our community is becoming a transit community, and it has not been a transit community. Like, for an example, I lived out here 55 of my 56 years. You're not seeing that pattern anymore in this community. You see people come from different areas through this whole transformation plan of the Chicago Housing Authority. Some people may come from what we call the low ends on 30th something Street, right here in Chicago. But they have access to a lot of stores and downtown and all that stuff. But when they come out here, it's such an isolated area. And the adjustment is so difficult for them. So they may live out here for 1 year, next thing you know, they're gone. So I'm looking at that pattern that it's being more transit community than a community that's been traditionally where people stay until they become grandparents or they even die, So that makes a difference. So And then that means that we always have to constantly introduce our organization to the new members that comes out here. So, and we at a disadvantage because we're not in the commercial hub of this community. We're not in the commercial strip. This is a disabled unit that they allow us to use as an office space, and we're like on the west side of the development where the commercial strip used to be, where our office used to be for like 28 years. But all that's still changing because they under redevelopment out here, so I just helped design what our office space would look like. So we'll be moving probably by next summer into that area where all the businesses is located at, which would give us more visibility, because sometimes people live in this zone here don't even know that we're in office here.
So I have a question. You said like you are a transit community sort of right now, right?
Say that again?
You said like you are turning into a transit community. So
Right.
how do you mobilize the member of those communities? Like you
Well-
said like you're introduced yourself.
Well, you know,
and then-
even though we may be a transit community, but we have what we call, what should I call it? We have friends of Altgeld that used to live out here that still comes out here. And we have Facebook pages,
Right.
you know, so we communicate in this community and we pass out flyers. We do phone calling. So, you know, because people do come in here for different type of services that we may provide. A lot of administrative stuff. They may want to fax something. They may want us to do their resume. They may want us to do a variety of things. And particularly we help a lot of people with tenant rights related issues.
Right.
Because that's what we always have done in this organization, is teach people about their rights as living in public housing. And, you know, to help them if they get into a situation and try to find the laws that help them to maneuver around so they can be able to keep their apartment. So I do referrals to many of the legal clinics that work on residential stuff.
So this story is so inspiring. The story of your mother and like how all of this came about. Has it ever been documented, like other than like by your Facebook page, or like is there a book or movie
Well,
or something?
she's in a lot of books in colleges and
But I mean, one like something that like you can like a documentary or something. I
no,
wonder
it
what
has not been no type of film documentary, but there's a book called is at home too. 50 Women Who Are Transforming the World. It's a book that documents 50 women around the globe, and she's one of those 50 women that was in that book. Now that was her last interview that she have ever done. But what I love about Google, you could Google her name,
Yeah.
Hazel Johnson of Altgeld Gardens, and you'll find a lot of printed articles about her.
Yeah.
But no, nothing documentary. No, has there been a book written about her exclusively? No, not of that.
Because I'm wondering, like, you're using the resources of the university, the engineering students, to make like the design of the building or anything else. You can also tap into the Art Institute of Chicago, the students over there, because they can like use the power of media to advocate this, you know, because this is so inspiring. Like, and why not like other communities or like other people hear about this?
Yeah, I've been approached a couple of times, but it just never came to
You know?
fruition yet because we're still a struggling organization, and I'm just trying to make sure that
Yeah.
that it stays, and then we can do that story, because I do want to tell her story. Because she has an interesting life. My mother come from a family of 5. At the age of 12, she was the only one living. At the age of 12. So no one really taught her what she learned. And the highest education she had was 10th grade education. Now how she got to talk about climate change, ozones, and all that old stuff. And she said she learned all that through mother with, you know, sometimes. And she said you measure things by how you feel, you know, because if it ain't right, you get that funny feeling, that gut feeling, that you know. And then she went on that a lot. But she said if it feel good, it'll touch your heart, you know. She said, you don't have to be, she never called herself a scientist or anything. She just said she was a mother that was concerned about her community, and she, you know, and that's what she grew on, and that's what she learned, and that's what she was able to accomplish, you know. I really don't talk about it that much, but she also gave organized experience to President Obama. He used to come sit at our kitchen table back in the day, and I remember him being at my house several times, my mom's house several times, and they went different places and that. But I do have one picture of him and my mother together. You know, she's standing in front of him, pointing her finger at CHA. You know, but I mean, that's what she did. She grew up. My mother always was an organizer. She used to take us on field trips when we was a little bit kid. She used to give block parties, skate parties. You know, so yeah, she has an extraordinary life, and she's from New Orleans. You know, she's from New Orleans.
No, I didn't know that.
Born and raised in New Orleans. Cherokee Hospital. Charity Hospital. Yeah.
I'm curious how the CTA communicates with you about the red line extension, or is there, what's the relationship between this organization?
Well, we have an indirect partnership with them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that
It's
direct
all
partnership with them, you
Yeah.
know. So we invite them to some of our community meetings to come and give us an update as to what the status of the rail line extension will be. Matter of fact, we had them here this summer. So we tried to do at least every season to bring them out to talk about opportunity. Matter of fact, they just invited us to a meeting on the 29th to talk about jobs opportunity as far as bus operators. And I'm an advocate for reentry folks, you know, because if you do a crime in this country, you still victimized by the crime that you committed, even though you did the time. You know, and I just think that's an unjust process, because that increased recidivism, where people, if I can't go to school, I can't get a job, you know, in certain areas, like in the state of Indiana, you cannot even get food stamps if you've been convicted of a crime. Then how you expect for somebody to live? You know, and that's just a travesty. So I want to be able to go down there and talk about how can we build a partnership, because they have a second chance program that allow people with backgrounds to be able to work for them. So I'm trying to create that pipeline with our community with them. So yeah, we try to keep them engaged in our community, so they won't forget about our organization being out here when all this redevelopment stuff happens.
Do you have a question?
And if you look at some of the brochure that she gave, this is one. We took 10 kids to Paris, France. We had a photography program that we taught them photography because of the international community was here in our community talking about when President Obama was running. So this is some of their work and some of the students that came out. Some of the kids from Paris, France came to Chicago, and then we went to Paris, France, and visited Paris. What else you got? And this is a cookout this is one of cookouts to try to educate the community about appreciating being outdoors, playing outdoor games with the community, and it was around climate issues that we was trying to introduce the community. And then this last one is just a general information about our organization.
How far away are you guys from those pet coke fields?
We're like at least about 12 miles away.
12 miles.
Yeah. But we formed a coalition though. It's the Greater Southeast Chicago Environmental Justice Alliance, where we work all together. We was very supportive because that Petco, when they used Fright to pass it around, it still come past our neighborhood, Little Canyon River. You know, so, and many of the people, even though we got unfit water to use, but people still fish there. You know, so people still fish. So we have an alliance that we really work with, the Southeast Environmental Task Force, who was the lead, and the Band Coalition. We got membership in that, so we all work together on the southeast side of Chicago. And now we formed the Chicago Environmental Justice Network.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You look a lot like your mom.
Huh?
People probably tell you that all the time.
What?
You look a lot like her.